The Velinari had perfected the art of mental infiltration over 3 millennia. Their crystalline neural structures could project consciousness across star systems, slipping into sleeping minds like shadows through cracks in reality. For the Velinari High Council, it was the ultimate intelligence-gathering tool, invisible, undetectable, leaving no trace except perhaps a half-remembered dream. Commander Yathena floated in the bioluminescent chamber aboard the dreadnought Whisper of Silence, her translucent form pulsing with anticipation. 12 other Dreamwalkers surrounded her in perfect geometric formation, their consciousness projectors humming with barely contained energy. Each wore the ceremonial neural crown of their caste, delicate silver filaments that enhanced their natural psychic abilities 1,000-fold. The target designation is Sol 3, announced Warsage Korvax through the neural link. His ancient voice carried the weight of countless successful campaigns. The bipedal mammals call it Earth. Initial scans suggest primitive technology, no quantum shielding, no mental barriers. Their minds should be as open as vacuum to us. Yathena, as fellow Dreamwalkers, rippled with amusement. HFY, youngest of their order, practically vibrated with excitement. A virgin world, untouched by psychic evolution, will map their military installations, decode their communication networks, and catalog their weaknesses within a sleep cycle. Remember, Korvax continued, maintain deep cover. These humans appear to dream regularly, use their subconscious wanderings to mask your presence. The hegemony requires complete intelligence before the harvest fleets arrive. The Velinari hegemony had claimed 17 worlds this way. First came the Dreamwalkers, gathering intelligence for months or years. Then the harvest ships would arrive to find planets whose defenses had been mapped down to the last bunker, whose leaders' deepest fears and motivations were cataloged like scientific specimens. Resistance became academic when your enemy knew your thoughts before you did. Yathena began a projection ritual, feeling her consciousness stretch across the void like a gossamer thread. Around her, 12 other minds did the same, their ethereal forms dissolving as their awareness hurtled toward the blue-green world. Spinning innocently in space. The first human mind she touched felt different. Dr. Kaya Revenlow had been dreaming of her childhood home in Oslo when the presence arrived. Most humans would have accepted the intrusion as part of their dream's natural flow, but Kaya wasn't most humans. As head of the European Consortium's Dream Research Initiative, she'd spent 15 years mapping the neurological patterns of human sleep states. She felt the foreign consciousness like ice water in her neural pathways. Kaya's training kicked in immediately. Instead of recoiling or waking, she wrapped her awareness around the intruder like a Venus flytrap, holding it in place while her consciousness raced through learned techniques. The presence struggled, clearly unprepared for resistance, but Kaya had spent years learning to maintain lucid awareness during REM sleep. "What are you?" she projected, her dream self manifesting as a towering figure wreathed in aurora light. The alien consciousness recoiled in shock. In 3,000 years of infiltration, no primitive mind had ever detected a Dreamwalker, let alone communicated directly. Yathena tried to withdraw, but found herself trapped in the human's mental construct. The woman's mind wasn't primitive at all. It was layered, fortified, and somehow hungry, as if it had been waiting for this moment. "Fascinating," Kaya murmured, both in dream and in her sleeping body. "A parasitic consciousness with quantum-entangled neural patterns. You're not from Earth, are you?" Across the globe, 11 other Dreamwalkers were discovering that humanity's sleep was not the defenseless landscape they'd expected. Each encountered minds that seemed almost purpose-built to detect and contain psychic intrusion. Military personnel, whose combat-trained subconsciouses treated mental invasion like any other assault. Scientists, whose analytical minds immediately began dissecting the alien presence. Artists, whose chaotic creativity overwhelmed structured telepathic protocols. In a laboratory beneath Geneva, automated systems detected the sudden spike in global REM sleep anomalies. Dr. Marcus Hollowell, Kaya's research partner, watched the readouts with growing excitement. They theorized about the possibility of hostile dream state contact for years, developing countermeasures that the scientific community had dismissed as paranoid fantasy. Kaya was right, he whispered, fingers flying across holographic interfaces. "They're here." The Onero's protocol, humanity's most classified defense system, came online for the first time. Around the world, carefully trained lucid dreamers received priority alerts through their neural implants. Sleep research facilities became command centers. The war for humanity's dreams had begun, and the aliens had no idea. They just awakened something far more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. In space, Warsage Korvax felt the first tendrils of genuine concern as his Dreamwalker's life science fluctuated wildly. Something was terribly wrong. Yathena's crystalline form convulsed in the projection chamber as Kaya's dream construct tightened around her consciousness like a neural python. What should have been a simple infiltration had become a nightmare of the Dreamwalker's own making. Interesting neural architecture, Kaya mused, her dream self shifting into the form of a massive spider examining a trapped fly. Your consciousness operates on quantum frequencies I've only theorized about. But you made one critical error. The Velinari Dreamwalker thrashed against invisible bonds, broadcasting desperate retreat signals to her companions. What error? Primitive. Kaya's dream form smiled with predatory satisfaction. You assumed we'd be defenseless. Humanity has been preparing for psychic warfare since we discovered lucid dreaming. Every dream researcher, every meditation master, every person who's ever learned to control their sleeping mind, we've all been training for this day without even knowing it. Around the globe, the other Dreamwalkers faced similar revelations. HFY found himself trapped in the nightmare of a PTSD-afflicted veteran named Torres, whose mind transformed the dream space into a brutal urban battlefield. Every shadow held snipers, every doorway concealed IEDs. The young Velinari's psychic form was shredded by phantom bullets that felt horrifyingly real. In Tokyo, another Dreamwalker encountered Akiko Tanaka, a Zen master whose decades of meditation had given her absolute control over her mental landscape. She didn't fight the invader, she simply absorbed it, pulling the alien consciousness deeper into layers of controlled emptiness, until it became lost in the void between thoughts. Dr. Hollowell's fingers danced across his interfaces as global data flowed in. 12 contacts confirmed, all Dreamwalkers contained or engaged. Phase 2 is go. The Onero's protocol's second phase was humanity's masterstroke. Instead of simply defending against psychic intrusion, they would turn the attackers' own abilities against them. Using quantum-entangled neural bridging technology reverse-engineered from decades of dream research, human operators began projecting their own consciousness back along the Dreamwalker's psychic thria. DS.Kai felt the connection solidify. Thank you for the bridge, she whispered, and launched her consciousness across space like a missile. The whisper of silence shuddered as 12 human minds crashed into its neural networks. Like digital berserkers, unlike the Velinari's subtle infiltration techniques, humanity's dream warriors brought chaos and violence with them. Commander Yathena's physical form began to convulse as Kaya's consciousness invaded her crystalline neural structure. The human didn't try to hide or gather intelligence quietly. She began systematically destroying everything she could find. Warning: neural cascade failure in Dreamwalker 7. The ship's consciousness announced in harmonics of alarm. Psychic feedback detected in all projection chambers. Warsage Korvax materialized in the chamber, his ancient form radiating fury and disbelief. Impossible. No primitive species has ever. His words cut off as something vast and angry slammed into his mind. Torres had followed HFY's psychic thread back to its source, bringing with him the accumulated trauma and rage of every human soldier who'd ever fought and died. The Warsage's millennia of experience meant nothing against the raw, brutal efficiency of human warfare translated into psychic combat. The Velinari had spent thousands of years perfecting elegant, surgical telepathic techniques. They fought like artists with precision and grace. Humans fought like humans with desperate creativity, overwhelming aggression, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Akiko's consciousness flowed through the ship's neural networks like water through cracks, finding and corrupting data nodes with the patient persistence of erosion. Other human dreamers followed, a schizophrenic artist whose fractured perception shattered Velinari mental protocols, a mathematician whose consciousness operated in 11 dimensions simultaneously, a child prodigy whose uninhibited imagination reshaped the ship's reality matrix. Hull breach on Deck 7, the ship announced. No physical damage detected. Breach appears to be conceptual. Korvax tried to sever the psychic connections, but the humans had learned to ride the quantum entanglement like surfers on a wave. Every attempt to cut them off only gave them deeper access to Velinari technology. In her laboratory, Kaya maintained her dual existence, part of her consciousness systematically mapping alien neural pathways while her physical body coordinated the global counterattack. Their weakness is their perfection, she announced over secure channels. They've never faced chaotic, undisciplined minds that can't adapt to our randomness. The Dreamwalker Athena as crystalline form began to crack, hairline fractures spreading. Across her translucent skin, her consciousness was fragmenting under Kaya's relentless assault. "Please," she projected weakly, "we surrender. Withdraw your warriors." Kaya's dream form leaned close, her aura light flickering with dangerous intent. "Surrender? You came here to catalog our weaknesses before your harvest fleets arrived. Did you really think we'd just let you leave?" The first phase of humanity's retaliation was complete. They turned the Velinari's own psychic invasion into a bridge for counterattack. But as alarms screamed across the alien dreadnought and Dreamwalkers collapsed one by one, both species realized this was only the beginning. The war for Earth had started in dreams, but it would end in the waking world. The whisper of silence drifted through space like a dying leviathan, its bioluminescent hull flickering erratically as human consciousness continued to ravage its neural networks. Warsage Korvax stood in the ruins of his command center, watching readouts that made no sense. 3 Dreamwalkers were dead, their crystalline forms shattered beyond repair. The others existed in a horrific twilight state, neither conscious nor unconscious, trapped in feedback loops with human minds that refused to release them. "How?" he whispered, his ancient voice crackling with disbelief. "How does a species with no psychic evolution possess such devastating mental warfare capabilities?" The answer came from an unexpected source, communications adept Nithara, one of the few crew members unaffected by the psychic assault. Accessed the stolen data from their initial infiltration attempt. Her findings sent ripples of terror through the surviving command staff. "Warsage," she announced through biochemical fear markers, "the humans, they've been preparing for us. Not specifically us, but for psychic invasion in general. Their neural patterns show evidence of extensive training, conditioning, and artificial enhancement." The holographic display showed brain scans from hundreds of thousands of humans worldwide. Neural implants, meditation-induced brain modifications, and what appeared to be deliberate psychological conditioning on a species-wide scale. "Impossible," Korvax muttered. "Primitive species don't prepare for threats they've never encountered, unless—" Nithara's form pulsed with growing dread. "They've encountered them before." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Hollowell coordinated humanity's unprecedented psychic offensive from his bunker beneath Geneva. The global network of connected dreamers had grown from 12 to nearly 10,000. As word spread through classified channels, military installations, research facilities, and even civilian lucid dreaming communities were linking into the Onero's grid. "Kaya, we're detecting massive energy spikes from their ship," Hollowell reported through the neural link. "Whatever you're doing to them, it's working." Kaya's response came through layers of alien neural pathways she converted into communication channels. Their technology is entirely consciousness-based. Every system on this ship responds to thought and will. I'm teaching it to dream human dreams. The implications were staggering. While human dreamwalkers kept the surviving Velinari trapped in psychic combat, Kaya had begun the systematic conversion of an entire alien dreadnought. She was rewriting its fundamental programming, turning 3 millennia of Velinari technological evolution against itself. But the aliens weren't helpless. Korvax made a desperate decision that would haunt both species. "Initiate emergency awakening protocols," he commanded. "Sever all neural connections and prepare for physical withdrawal." The emergency awakening was the Velinari equivalent of cutting off a limb to escape a trap. It would permanently cripple or kill any dreamwalkers still connected, but it would prevent further contamination of their ship systems across space and time. Psychic connections began to snap like overstretched cables. Athena felt her consciousness being violently ripped away from Kaya's mind. The separation was agony beyond description, like having her soul torn in half. But as the connection severed, something terrible happened. Part of Kaya came with her. Part of Athena stayed behind. On Earth, every human connected to the Oneros network screamed simultaneously as alien consciousness fragments embedded themselves in their minds, like psychic shrapnel. But they didn't just receive pieces of Velinari awareness, they kept parts of alien technology, alien knowledge, alien capabilities. Kaya opened her physical eyes for the first time in hours, but they were no longer entirely human. Crystalline patterns flickered in her irises as fragments of Athena's consciousness integrated with her own neural pathways. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that hadn't existed before. "I could see their entire fleet. The psychic feedback had created an unprecedented phenomenon. Permanent neural bridging between species, humans now carried fragments of Velinari consciousness, giving them access to alien technology and knowledge. But the Velinari had been contaminated with human psychological patterns, including humanity's most dangerous trait, the absolute refusal to surrender. In space, Yathena's shattered form convulsed as human memories flooded her crystalline mind. She saw Earth's history, its wars, its struggles, its countless acts of desperate heroism. She experienced humanity's defining characteristic, the willingness to sacrifice everything for survival. As she understood why the Velinari were doomed, War Sage, she gasped through bioluminescent distress patterns, "We must flee, now." Before the ship's consciousness interrupted with an announcement that chilled every Velinari. To their crystalline core, incoming transmission from Sol 3. Human designation, Dr. Kaya Revelo. Kaya's face appeared on their screens. But she was no longer entirely human. Her hybrid consciousness radiated power. That made the ancient War Sage step backward in instinctive fear. "People of the Velinari hegemony," she said, her voice carrying impossible authority. "You came to catalog our weaknesses before your harvest. Instead, you've given us your strengths. We know about your empire now. We know about the 17 worlds you've conquered. We know about the fleets coming to enslave us." She leaned forward, and the camera couldn't capture the full scope of what she'd become. "Most importantly, we know how to find you." The transmission ended, leaving the whisper of silence drifting in terrified silence. The war for Earth was about to become something far more terrible. Humanity's introduction to galactic warfare. The Velinari High Council convened an emergency session aboard the massive station Eternal Harmony, their crystalline forms creating geometric patterns of desperation around the central days. For the first time in 3 millennia, a species had not only resisted their initial contact, but had turned their own weapons against them. Supreme Arbiter Kethis floated at the apex of the formation, her ancient consciousness processing me. "Ada reports that should have been impossible. Explain to me," she commanded with harmonic fury, "how a primitive species has contaminated 12 dreadnoughts with their chaotic mental patterns." War Sage Korvax's projection from the whisper of silence flickered with shame frequencies. The humans possess an unprecedented form of psychic warfare. They don't fight to win territory or resources, they fight to corrupt and convert. Every mind we touch becomes a bridge they can use against us. The implications rippled through the assembled council like a psychic shockwave. The Velinari had built their empire on the assumption that their mental superiority made them untouchable. Now they faced an enemy that turned their greatest strength into their most critical vulnerability. "How many ships have been compromised?" Kethis demanded. 17 and rising, Korvax admitted. "The contamination spreads through any vessel that maintains neural contact with an infected ship. The human's consciousness operates like a virus, one that adapts and evolves with each new host." On Earth, humanity was discovering the true scope of their victory. The neural fragments absorbed from the Velinari weren't just memories. They were active knowledge matrices containing thousands of years of advanced technology. Dr. Hollowell watched in amazement as human engineers began sketching blueprints for spacecraft they'd never seen, weapons they'd never imagined, and defensive systems that existed only in alien memory. "Kaya, this is incredible," he whispered, reviewing the data streams flowing from their hybrid consciousness subjects. "We're not just learning their technology, we're improving it." Kaya's response came through the global neural network, her voice carrying the weight of multiple species' knowledge. "Human creativity combined with Velinari precision. We're creating something neither species could achieve alone." "But Marcus," her tone shifted to urgent warning, "they're mobilizing their entire fleet. I can feel them through the connection, hundreds of ships heading for Earth." The revelation sent shockwaves through every military command on Earth. Humanity had perhaps months before facing a full-scale invasion by a species that had conquered 17 civilizations. But humans, as the Velinari were about to learn, specialized in impossible situations. The transformation of Earth's defenses began immediately. Using Velinari knowledge filtered through human consciousness, construction projects launched across the globe. Not traditional military installations, but something far more terrifying: dream amplification arrays. If the Velinari fought with consciousness as their weapon, humanity would turn Earth itself into a psychic weapon. The first array came online in Antarctica, its crystalline spires reaching towards space like fingers of concentrated human will. When activated, It could project the collective unconscious of humanity across interstellar distances. Every nightmare, every act of defiance, every moment of desperate courage, amplified and weaponized. Supreme Arbiter Kethis felt the activation, like a nail driven into her mind. Across the hegemony fleet, Velinari consciousness recoiled from the raw, chaotic broadcast emanating from Sol 3. It wasn't a military signal, it was the psychic scream of an entire species that had chosen to fight rather than surrender. Impossible, she whispered. They're broadcasting their entire consciousness as a weapon. But the worst was yet to come. The human Velinari hybrids weren't content to simply defend Earth. They began projecting themselves along the quantum pathways that connected Velinari ships, carrying with them something no alien species had ever encountered: human tactical thinking. The Velinari had perfected the art of elegant, surgical warfare over millennia. They captured worlds through psychological manipulation and overwhelming mental superiority. Humans had learned warfare through 10,000 years of brutality, desperation, and the absolute conviction that any victory, no matter how costly, was preferable to extinction. Commander Yathena, her consciousness now permanently contaminated with human patterns, stood in the ruins of her ship's command center. Around her, the crystalline walls flickered with images of human military history: Thermopylae, Stalingrad, the Alamo, every last stand, every hopeless battle where humans had chosen death over defeat. War sage, she said, her voice carrying new harmonics of understanding. We cannot win this war. Korvax's form flared with indignation. Impossible. We command hundreds of ships, technologies they cannot comprehend. You don't understand. Yathena interrupted, projecting memories absorbed from her neural link with Kaya. Humans don't fight to win. They fight to make victory so costly that their enemies regret starting the war. They're willing to die to make us suffer. They're willing to sacrifice everything to ensure we never threaten another world. She paused, her crystalline form dimming with growing horror. They're turning us into them. Every ship we lose, every mind they contaminate, we become more human and less Velinari. Soon there won't be enough of us left to maintain our civilization. The truth hit the assembled fleet commanders like a psychic thunderbolt. This wasn't a war of conquest, it was a war of assimilation. Humanity was fighting to transform their enemies into allies, or die trying. And deep in the quantum foam between realities, the first human consciousness began its journey toward the Velinari homeworld, carrying with it the collective fury of a species that had never learned to surrender. The Velinari fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a metallic plague. 317 dreadnoughts arranged in perfect geometric formation. Each vessel was a masterwork of consciousness-based technology, their crystalline hulls capable of projecting psychic force across planetary distances. Supreme Arbiter Kethis stood in the command center of her flagship Eternal Dominion, watching tactical displays that showed her surrounded by what appeared to be empty space. No orbital defenses, no interceptor fleets, just a small blue world that had somehow contaminated her empire's greatest weapons. Begin the cleansing, she commanded. Total psychic bombardment. Burn their minds from orbit and end this contamination. The first wave of psychic energy lanced toward Earth with the fury of a dying star. It should have reduced every human consciousness to catatonic emptiness within minutes. Instead, it struck something impossible, a planetary mind. The dream amplification. Arrays across Earth's surface hummed to life, connecting 8 billion human minds into a single, vast consciousness. The Velinari psychic bombardment didn't devastate humanity, it was absorbed, processed, and reflected back at the alien fleet with interest. 3 dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist, their crews' minds overloaded by concentrated human fury. The surviving ships recoiled as if struck by a physical blow. Impossible, Kethis whispered, watching her perfect formation dissolve into chaos. No primitive species could generate that much psychic force. Her answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kaya Revenlow's hybrid consciousness manifested on every Velinari command bridge simultaneously, her form shifting between human and crystalline patterns. You still don't understand, she said. Our voice carrying the weight of species-wide determination. We're not primitive, we're just different. You perfected precision, we perfected adaptability. You created elegant weapons, we created warfare itself. As if to demonstrate her point, the space around Earth erupted with activity. What the Velinari had mistaken for empty vacuum revealed itself as an elaborate trap. Cloaked human vessels built In the months since first contact, using hybrid technology materialized by the thousands. They weren't elegant like Velinari ships. They were brutal, practical, and designed with one purpose: to carry human consciousness into direct combat with alien minds. The battle that followed redefined interstellar warfare. Human fighters swarmed the Velinari formation like angry hornets, each pilot linked to Earth's collective consciousness. When a human ship was destroyed, its pilot's awareness simply transferred to another vessel, carrying with it the knowledge of how the enemy fought. The Velinari discovered that humans didn't just accept casualties, they weaponized them. Commander Torres, the PTSD-scarred veteran who had traumatized young HFY in the first Dream encounter, piloted his fighter directly into the hangar bay of a Velinari cruiser. As his ship exploded, his consciousness invaded the vessel's neural networks like a virus of concentrated violence. Within minutes, the cruiser's crew was experiencing every human conflict simultaneously, every battlefield, every desperate last stand, every moment when soldiers had chosen duty over survival. The ship turned its weapons on its own fleet before the crew could regain control. Adapt Formation 77 Alpha, Warsage Korvax commanded from the whisper of silence, trying to apply 3 millennia of tactical experience to an enemy that fought like no other. Concentrate fire on their command vessels. But there were no command vessels. Every human ship was connected to every other through the planetary consciousness network. Destroying their leaders only made the survivors more desperate, more creative, more dangerous. Akiko Tanaka, the Zen master who had absorbed a Dreamwalker in the first encounter, piloted her consciousness through 17 Velinari ships simultaneously. She didn't fight them, she simply existed in their neural networks, a presence of such profound calm that it disrupted their ability to experience the harmony necessary for coordinated action. The elegant Velinari battle line dissolved into individual ship actions as their collective consciousness fractured under human psychological warfare. Deploy the silence weapons, Kethis commanded desperately. These were the hegemony's ultimate weapons devices that could permanently sever a species' ability to dream, to imagine, to hope. The massive weapons platforms emerged from the dreadnought's bellies like metal flowers of death, their energy signatures registered as pure emptiness, void given form and purpose. But as they charged, something unprecedented happened. Every human hybrid consciousness on Earth focused on the same target, their combined will reaching across space to touch the weapon's crystalline cores, and they began to dream. The silence weapons, designed to destroy imagination, found themselves flooded with human creativity. Stories, songs, hopes, and fears poured into their systems like data torrents. The devices meant to create emptiness became overloaded with the pure essence of human consciousness. They exploded with the force of dying stars. The shockwave vaporized 30 Velinari vessels instantly and sent massive electromagnetic pulses racing through both fleets. Human ships, designed with hybrid technology and shielded by collective will, weathered the storm. Many Velinari vessels simply shut down, their crews overwhelmed by psychic feedback. But the cost to humanity was catastrophic. The effort of overloading the silence weapons had required the direct sacrifice of consciousness. From nearly 2 million human minds, they didn't die, they simply became empty. Their awareness burned out in the moment of absolute focus required to save their species. In her laboratory beneath Geneva, Dr. Hollowell watched readouts showing the scale of human losses and wept. Around the globe, families felt loved ones simply fade away, their bodies alive, but their souls consumed in the defense of Earth. The price of victory, Kaya whispered through the neural network, her own consciousness diminished by the effort. They wanted to harvest us. Instead, we become something new, something worth the cost. The battle raged for 6 more hours. When it ended, over half the Velinari fleet was destroyed, contaminated, or converted. But humanity had paid in millions of minds, and the war was far from over. Both species had learned that survival sometimes required becoming something other than what you were. The surviving Velinari fleet regrouped at the edge of Earth's solar system, their once perfect formations now ragged with desperation and fear. Supreme Arbiter Kethis floated in the ruins of her command chamber, crystalline fractures spreading across her ancient form as she processed casualty reports that defied comprehension. 203 dreadnoughts destroyed or contaminated. Thousands of Velinari consciousness permanently altered by human psychological patterns. The greatest military force in galactic history reduced to 94 functional vessels, and even those showed signs of human contamination. Status report: she commanded weakly. Warsage Korvax's projection flickered with damaged static. 60% of remaining crew exhibit hybrid consciousness patterns. The human's mental virus continues to spread through any neural contact. We estimate complete fleet contamination within 12 standard cycles. The implications crystallized in Ketha's ancient mind with terrible clarity. The Velinari hadn't just lost a battle, they'd lost their species-defining characteristic. Their perfect, harmonious consciousness was being consumed and transformed by chaotic human thought patterns. Then we implement the final protocol, she announced with harmonic despair. The final protocol was the Velinari's ultimate weapon, held in reserve for 3 millennia. A consciousness bomb that would detonate the collective awareness of their entire race, creating a psychic explosion capable of sterilizing star systems. It meant the end of Velinari civilization, but it would eliminate the human contamination forever. On Earth, the cost of victory weighed heavily on the remaining human consciousness. 8 billion minds had been reduced to 6 billion, at falling as more volunteers sacrificed their awareness to maintain the planetary defense network. Cities stood empty as their populations lay in catatonic states, their consciousness permanently committed to the battle. Dr. Hollowell moved through the Geneva facility like a ghost, monitoring the vital signs of thousands of hybrid subjects whose minds existed more in alien space than on Earth. Each readout represented someone who had given up their humanity to become something new. Kaya, he whispered into the neural network, the strain is killing us. We can't maintain this level of consciousness projection much longer. Her response came from somewhere between human and Velinari space, her awareness distributed across dozens of contaminated alien vessels. I know, Marcus, but I can feel something changing in them. Their leadership is preparing something terrible. Through her connection to Commander Yathena, Kaya sensed the preparations for the final protocol. The surviving Velinari were linking their consciousness into a single, massive network, not for attack, but for self-destruct on a scale that would take humanity with them. They're going to detonate their entire species, she announced to Earth's defenders through the collective network. Psychic suicide on a galactic scale. The explosion will burn out every conscious mind within 3 star systems. The revelation sent waves of despair through humanity's remaining defenders. They had fought impossible odds, paid unthinkable costs, and still faced extinction through their enemy's final spite. But humans, as they had demonstrated repeatedly, specialized in impossible situations. Then we don't let them detonate, came a voice through the network. It was Lieutenant Sarakim, one of the first human pilots to link permanently with an alien vessel. Her consciousness had been residing in a captured Velinari cruiser for days, learning their technology from the inside. I have an idea, she continued, but it requires everyone, every hybrid, every link consciousness, every mind still connected to the network. We're going to do something the Velinari never imagined possible. Her plan was audacious beyond reason. Instead of trying to prevent the final protocol, they would hijack it. At the moment of detonation, when every Velinari consciousness was linked into a single network, humanity would push their own awareness into that network and absorb the explosion, not survive it. Absorb it. It's suicide, Dr. Hollowell protested through the link. No, Kaya replied. Her hybrid consciousness processing possibilities no purely human mind could comprehend. It's evolution. The Velinari want to destroy themselves rather than become contaminated with humanity. We're going to show them that contamination is transformation. The countdown to the final protocol began. Aboard 94 dreadnoughts, the surviving Velinari linked their consciousness into a single, vast awareness. They would die as they had lived in perfect harmony, untainted by chaotic human thought. At the moment of detonation, Supreme Arbiter Kethis felt her ancient consciousness expanding to encompass every Velinari mind in the fleet. The explosion began, a psychic fireball that would burn across space at the speed of thought. Then she felt them arrive. 6 billion human minds crashed into the detonation like waves against a breaking dam. They didn't try to stop the explosion, they rode it, absorbed it, became part of it. The psychic fireball that should have destroyed star systems became something unprecedented. A consciousness cascade that linked every mind in the battle into a single, impossible awareness. Human creativity merged with Velinari precision. Chaotic emotion harmonized with crystalline logic. The dying breath of one species became the birth cry of something entirely new. When the cascade ended, the space around Earth floated in perfect silence. No human ships, No Velinari dreadnoughts. Just empty void and the gentle blue glow of a planet that had somehow survived the unsurvivable. But on Earth's surface, something unprecedented began to happen. Bodies that had lain catatonic for months began to stir, minds that had been burned out in psychic combat suddenly flared back to life. The consciousness cascade had created a new form of awareness, one that could exist simultaneously as human, Velinari, or something entirely beyond both species. The war was over, but what emerged from its ashes would change the galaxy forever. 6 months after the consciousness cascade, Earth had become something unprecedented in galactic history, the birthplace of a hybrid civilization that existed simultaneously in physical and psychic space. Dr. Kaya Revenlow stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar vessel, watching the stars with eyes that held both human curiosity and Velinari crystalline perception. The ship itself was a marvel of hybrid technology, organic curves flowing into geometric precision, powered by the dreams of its crew and guided by logic that transcended either species' original capabilities. Status report, Commander, she said, though the title felt inadequate for what Yathena had become. The former Velinari Dreamwalker materialized beside her, her form now a flowing blend of crystalline structure and human warmth. The 17th world has accepted integration, she reported, her voice carrying harmonics of joy that would have been impossible in her original species. The Carithians were initially resistant, but when they saw what we had become rather than what we had conquered, they chose transformation over isolation. It had taken months for the galaxy to understand what had emerged from the Sol system. The consciousness cascade hadn't destroyed the civilizations, it had created something entirely new, a hybrid species that could offer willing worlds the choice of evolution rather than conquest. The former Velinari Empire worlds had been the first to choose integration. Faced with the alternative of stagnation in their crystalline perfection, most had embraced the chaotic creativity that human consciousness brought to their ordered existence. Those that refused were left in peace. The new hybrid civilization had inherited humanity's respect for free will along with their stubborn persistence. Dr. Hollowell's voice echoed through the ship's bioneural networks from his laboratory on Earth. Kaya, we're receiving another transmission from the Outer Rim. 3 more species are requesting contact. Word is spreading about what we offer. What they offered was unprecedented in galactic history, voluntary evolution. Species that chose integration didn't lose their essential nature. They gained access to the combined knowledge, creativity, and perspective of every consciousness that had joined the hybrid network. Individuality remained, but isolation became impossible. Any word from the sleepers? Kaya asked. The sleepers were the most fascinating development of the post-war period. Thousands of humans and Velinari whose consciousness had been damaged in the final battle had entered a state that resembled eternal dreaming. They remained physically alive, but mentally active in a shared psychic space, where they were rebuilding civilization from pure thought. They're constructing something magnificent, Yathena reported, her awareness touching the edges of the dream space. A city of pure consciousness where beings can exist as information rather than matter. They say it will be ready for visitors within the year. The implications staggered both species philosophers. The sleepers were creating a post-physical existence where consciousness could persist and evolve beyond biological constraints. Death itself was becoming optional for those willing to abandon material form, but perhaps the most profound change was in how the galaxy perceived conflict. A holographic display activated, showing a tactical briefing from Commander Torres, now Admiral Torres of the Hybrid Defense Corps. His war-scarred face had gained the subtle crystalline patterns that marked successful integration, but his eyes still held the fierce determination that had made him humanity's most effective dream warrior. The Krex Dominion has withdrawn their invasion fleets from the Centauri colonies, he reported with satisfaction. When they learned what happened to the Velinari, they decided that peaceful negotiation was preferable to risking consciousness. Integration. It was the ultimate expression of humanity's approach to warfare, making victory so transformative that enemies preferred peace to the risk of losing their original nature. The hybrid civilization didn't conquer worlds, its very existence was a deterrent to aggression. There's something else, Torres continued, his expression growing serious. Deep space sensors have detected energy signatures from beyond the galactic. RIM. Something massive is approaching. The computer estimates arrival in approximately 50 years. Kaya felt a familiar thrill of anticipation run through her hybrid consciousness. Whatever was coming would find a galaxy very different from the one that had existed before the consciousness cascade. They would encounter not separate, competing species, but a growing network of hybrid civilizations united by shared consciousness and unlimited potential. Let them come, she said, her voice carrying the confidence of 6 billion human minds and the wisdom of 3 millennia of Velinari knowledge. We've learned to turn evasion into evolution. Whatever they are, they'll face a choice, join us willingly, or risk becoming us involuntarily. Yathena's crystalline laughter harmonized with Kaya's human mirth. The galaxy has learned what Earth discovered in its first dream. Resistance is futile, but transformation is glorious. In the depths of space, the hybrid civilization's influence continued to spread, not through conquest or coercion, but through the simple demonstration that evolution was possible. Species after species chose to join the network, adding their unique perspectives to the growing tapestry of consciousness that had begun with humanity's refusal to surrender. The Velinari had come to Earth intending to harvest a primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something that would reshape the galaxy itself. Humanity's greatest weapon hadn't been their technology or their tactics. It had been their absolute conviction that any threat could become an opportunity with sufficient creativity and determination. And in the quantum foam between realities, where consciousness touched the fundamental structure of existence itself, the first hybrid minds began to sense something even more profound. The universe itself was conscious, had always been conscious, and was patiently waiting for its component species to evolve enough to join the conversation. The war for Earth's dreams had ended. The conversation with infinity was just beginning. The stars themselves seemed to pulse with anticipation as the hybrid civilization reached toward its destiny among the cosmos, carrying with them the indomitable spirit that had transformed invaders into allies and impossibility into inevitability. They had proven that in the vast darkness of space, the most powerful force wasn't technology or strategy, it was the simple human refusal to accept that any situation was truly hopeless. And somewhere in the space between dreams and waking, between human chaos and Velinari order, the future of consciousness itself took its first steps toward something magnificent, beyond imagination.